Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Our Faith with Archbishop Jerome Mostecchi. I'm Jeff Jackson. Thanks for joining us. Good morning, Archbishop.
Good morning, Jeff.
We are joined this morning by telephone by a very special guest, and that is Robert Morlino, who is Bishop of the Diocese of Madison.
Yeah, so a wonderful bishop of the Diocese of Madison, and a very important and key position in the state of Wisconsin, because it's our capital. And so Bishop Morlino is basically on the front line. He was an individual who has to respond immediately to a lot of legislative decisions and basically the sense of the political aspects of the state.
Bishop Morlino, thank you so much for joining us. And tell us a little bit about your faith story and about your path to the priesthood and ultimately to being Bishop of the Diocese of Madison.
Gladly. I was born in near the Pocono Mountains in the little town of Dunmore, Pennsylvania, in the Diocese of Scranton, which was, and that little town of Dunmore was about 99.9% Catholic. So there were 7 Catholic churches there, all broken down according to ethnic lines. And so I went to daily Mass up the street growing up at the Slovak parish, which was only a half a block away. But we were registered and went to Sunday Mass, of course, at the Italian parish, which was a short drive. Anyway, all of us kids, all of us guys especially, served Mass, and all of us played celebrating Mass when we were kids. And we all thought about the priesthood. We liked the priests liked us. They were always excellent examples for us. And so as I grew up, and as many of us grew up, the thought of priesthood was always either in the front of our mind or in the back of our mind. And then, of course, when we hit middle school, 7th and 8th grade, girls appeared on the horizon for us, and the thought of the priesthood receded a little bit more into the background as we, as it were, accepted gladly a new challenge in having girlfriends and going to dances and all those kinds of things. And that perdured during the early years of high school. And but I never stopped thinking about being a priest, and going to a Jesuit high school as I did, I started to think more about being a Jesuit priest, but still dating and so on. When junior year came, I kind of had a bolt out of the blue in my life. My dad, who was only 47 years old and had been a very excellent athlete, he had played AAA baseball, and also was still very active, was a good golfer and so on. He came home one day from work, and he didn't want to eat dinner. He wanted to go lie down. And within the hour, he became very, very sick. And within the next hour, he died. And I'm an only child. So that was quite the interruption of my mother's and my life. And at the same time that his death put me against the wall in terms of my own relationship with God, which I was serious about then, at least serious for a high school kid. And I found myself with the choice of either turning against God, how could you do this, or trusting God. Why did you do this? I know that you did it out of love for everybody involved, and I know that you will draw good out of this terrible evil that appeared in my life. By God's grace, I was very fortunate in the help of many priests, the parish priests and the Jesuits. I chose to trust God. And that trust led me to ask myself, shouldn't that trust be complete? And the most complete way I could imagine of trusting God for myself would have been to go in the priesthood. And so right after high school, I went in the Jesuit novitiate in Wernersville, Pennsylvania. I have had many tough days since that time. That was 50 years ago this year, in 1964. I've had many tough days since then, but never once have I seriously thought of leaving. I never thought of seriously about leaving the seminary, let alone the priesthood. It was clear to me that that's where I belonged, and despite the tough days, and oftentimes because of the tough days, I've had a very, very, very happy priesthood. And in 1981, after some discernment, I moved from the Jesuits. I was ordained a Jesuit priest in 74. In 1981, so I also have an anniversary of that this year. In 1981, I moved from the Jesuits to the Diocese of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Well, why Kalamazoo? I was teaching at Notre Dame at the time and studying there. And I was working on weekends in the Diocese of Kalamazoo, and it simply was the diocese that I knew best, and after so many years where I felt most at home. So I went to Kalamazoo, and I incarnated there, and I had many ministries. When I was there, I was vicar for clergy at the beginning, and then I became the executive assistant to the bishop, and then also rector of St. Augustine's Cathedral. And I didn't think I'd be at St. Augustine's Cathedral for the rest of my life. As a matter of fact, I was long overdue a sabbatical, and I was in the process of arranging to go teach at Sacred Heart Major Seminary in Detroit, to teach there full-time for several years, with the bishop's permission, of course. And I got a phone call the very day I was supposed to leave for Sacred Heart Seminary, telling me that I had been named the Bishop of Helena, Montana. Well, I had never been in the Northwest, and I had a picture of cowboys and a lot of outdoor hunting and fishing and camping, which are not exactly the things that I do. And I just wondered about all of that. And it was very mysterious and very shocking. It was especially shocking since Jesuits are trained never to think about prelatures or promotions or anything like that. As a matter of fact, Jesuits take a simple vow not to accept any prelatures and such. So with the Jesuit formation, I had never thought about those things. So it came as quite a shock. And it turned out, of course, to be a blessed shock. It was a complete change of my life and what I was used to. I was just speechless, and I still am when I think about it. But that began my life as a bishop, and this year will be, I will be 15 years a bishop this year.
Wow.
And so I'm no baby bishop anymore.
And you are a John Paul II bishop, correct?
Pardon?
You are a John Paul II bishop.
Oh, yes, very, very much.
You are
very much. As a matter of fact, when I went over for the bishop's workshop for the new bishops at the Vatican, we were presented by the now Cardinal Harvey to Pope John Paul, and I just happened to be the first in line. And Cardinal Harvey, then Archbishop, said to the Pope, Holy Father, these are the baby bishops. And I was the first in line, and he looked up at me and said, big baby.
Of course.
But anyway, I've had a wonderful, wonderful life as a priest and a bishop. And it turned out that the sudden death of my father, the tragic death of my father, turned out to be kind of a trigger through which all of that transpired. And it's always been unbelievable to me how God works in our lives from day to day, and how many of the gifts that he gives us are hidden gifts.
One of the things,
and I enjoy them so much, but I'm talking too much as usual.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to ask you a question. You became a bishop of Madison, Wisconsin, which is the capital, and that
Right.
certainly presents its challenges. So you went from Helena, which has its own kind of rhythm and pace, to suddenly being the bishop of the capital of Wisconsin, which definitely has its marked challenges, and certainly we all know has that tension between the liberal conservative bent in the city itself.
Absolutely, and it's interesting because Helena was a state capital in which I was surrounded by libertarians, who are a unique breed themselves. Montana libertarians, many of them, and Madison is a city where I'm surrounded by people who are very liberal and progressive in their leanings, and of course that brings them frequently now into opposition to the teachings of the church. And it seems that kind of confronting that in the best way that I can is the daily bread that I eat here.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to eat it, and I don't look undernourished either.
Well, I'm sure it's the bread of the Eucharist that keeps you strong.
Absolutely.
I'm convinced. I'm basically convinced of that, and I can testify to the fact that Bishop Morlino is one of our guiding lights and as a Catholic religious leader in Wisconsin.
No question.
One of the things, what do you see, Bishop Morlino, as the real challenge of the church today? Every era presents its own challenge to Catholics. What do you see as the challenge to the church today?
Well, in the Diocese of Madison, the challenge is a secularism that rejects any idea of objective truth, because one of the three major gifts offices of the church is the gift of teaching, as in teaching the truth.
So true, Bishop Morlino. We're joined this morning by Bishop Robert Morlino of the Diocese of Madison. Archbishop Listecki and I will be back with Bishop Morlino in a few moments to talk more about what's going on in the Diocese of Madison. You're listening to Living Our Faith with Archbishop Jerome Listecki on Relevant Radio. We'll be right back.
Here's Sarah, a real mom with real reasons for sending her kids to a Catholic school.
Another reason that I love the school so much keeps coming to mind, and it's kind of comical. Our kids can't get away with much in our Catholic school because we see each other all the time. We interact with the families. We hang out together. We vacation together. We see each other in church. So if my child at school does something that's out of line, I'm probably going to hear about it before they even get home from school that day. So that if it's a big enough deal, I can intervene right away. And if it's a small enough deal, I can just, sit back and figure out what's going to be best for them if they need to figure it out on their own, or if I can somehow help them figure it out to be a better person overall.
Contact the Catholic school near you. Take a tour and ask questions. Explore financial aid options that may be available. You just might find your own real reasons to choose Catholic education for your child. To find a Catholic school near you in the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, visit schools.archmil.org.
It was the worst airplane trip I'd ever been on in my life. I looked at my boarding pass. They had me in row 187K. 187K. I didn't even realize they made airplanes that big. I mean, economy ended in row 90, so you can imagine the section I was sitting in. Well, I finally got to my seat. What a nightmare. On one side of me, a screaming baby. No adult, just a screaming baby. On the other side, a fish. A fish, yeah, a real fish. I mean, usually I like to talk to the guy sitting next to me, but this character had no personality at all. Although he did kind of chuckle when the stewardess mentioned that the seat could be used as a flotation device. Anyway, just to show you how rude this guy was, he starts smoking a pipe and fills the whole cabin up with smoke. But I got the last laugh when the stewardess came around. He ordered red wine. Fish with red wine. Imagine that. You just did. You saw it on the radio.
Email us, businessbuilding@relevantradio.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to Living Our Faith with Archbishop Jerome Listecki. We're joined this morning by Robert Morlino, who is Bishop of the Diocese of Madison.
You know, I want to say something to you, Jeff. You know, one of the great talents of Bishop Morlino is his ever energy or surrounding vocations. This is a man who sees immediately a young man, sees the potential of priesthood, and reaches out to him in very particular ways. It's almost an envy of other bishops, the way Bishop Morlino will zero in on vocations. So I often tease him. I don't want him around my seminarians too much because of his ability, his ability, his attractiveness, both as a bishop and as what do you attribute that real sense of a gift that you have of seeing that vocation and potential in other young men?
Well, I guess during my time in the Jesuits, I taught college for 11 years, and I lived in the residence halls with the boys. And I think I was able to be dad in that circumstance in a way that was very, very life-giving, and enabled me really to get to know them, how they think and what they do and so on, and how their motives work. And I think that experience for 11 years left me with an unusual ability to be able to read young men in important matters like vocations. Of course, I talked to many in the student residence halls about vocations. And when I moved to the Diocese of Kalamazoo, I just kept that style up. It gave me a great comfort level with young people.
Let me also
say I'm very grateful for that even today, because I'm getting to an age where all the help that I can get to feel young is really appreciated.
Let me also say that Bishop Morlino literally is an excellent cook, and whips up a mean bowl of pasta that suddenly entices a lot of the young men. So if they're questioning their vocation, they certainly don't question their stomachs when they have that. And he certainly his ability to put on a great dinner, for vocational dinner for a lot of young men is well known.
Bishop, go ahead.
That really, by God's grace, that works well.
Bishop, does being in a big university town give you and the diocese a larger opportunity to reach out to young people?
Yeah, without any question. And we do have an excellent campus ministry going at St. Paul's. And we're in the process of trying to raise funds for a new center right now, which we really need, because our current facilities are rather dilapidated, and we really are, full to the gills with people. There's just not enough room for people to be together in a way that's comfortable for forming community and so on. So that's a wonderful situation that we have, and we are getting vocations from that situation. And I do try. We do try to make the vocation directors of other dioceses very welcome when they come there. And so some of what happens is not always deliberate on my part, but I don't really fight it terribly, and I don't think my brother bishops would either if they were in the same situation.
Well, one of the great things is God usually chooses the right person for the right place at the right time. And Bishop Morlino's background is in moral theology, and that extensive training in moral theology allows him to confront issues that maybe others who are not as well trained would not be able to do so. As the Bishop of Madison, he's on the front line when legislative issues such as challenges to marriage being between one man and one woman is confronted, when religious liberty, when the aspects of contraceptive mandates are placed upon us. He's right there in the front line, and legislators are looking to him. And as a teacher in his background, he does a tremendous work for the church in being that first line of defense. And I personally want to thank him for that witness that he has. But I know how difficult it has to be that, when those issues come right out, they look for the man on the scene to be able to answer those questions.
Well, and I have to add, I don't want this too much to sound like a mutual admiration society, but it is. And Archbishop Listecki has been a real blessing to me as Metropolitan Archbishop, to me personally, in the support and the friendship we have, but also in the ways that he keeps the five bishops together in Wisconsin, working together and collaborating. He has wonderful gifts to bring that about. And I think the degree to which we're unified among ourselves is marvelous. And I attribute an awful lot of that to Archbishop Listecki's caring ministry toward us.
Well, I thank you for saying that, Bishop Morlino, and I love you too. But it's an easy task, and I think you would agree with me when you have the five bishops of Wisconsin. As individuals who have, a tremendous love for the church, great pastor hearts, and wonderful a sense of carrying out the church's teaching. So it makes our collaboration fairly easy. In fact, remember what Benedict the 15th said to us when we were in it together for our Limina visit. We walked in and I said he said, you not only collaborate but you like each other. That's and that's true. We do like and admire one another. So which is really wonderful. Tell me what do you make of the question? And I know we have only a little time left. Hopefully we'd have a lot. But what do you make of the real attack on religious freedom today in our society, in our state, and even in our nation?
I am just flabbergasted, honestly. I never thought that the persecution of Christianity and Catholicism, very specifically, could rise so quickly to the level to which it's risen. I mean, it's explicit. It's unabashed. Full-page ads are being taken out against us in the New York Times. Legislation is being proposed that's really nationally, that's really focused on us and impinging on our religious freedom to force us to provide services that are against our conscience. And I would never have believed that this worm could turn so quickly. But I think it's where the secularism and the progressivism of our society leads, because, a lot of things fit together. I mean, in many cases, love in our culture and in our society is reduced to sexual expression. Instead of finding love, which is what the human heart really longs for, people are isolated in their own, in their own world with their own truth, and therefore the closest they can come to love is sexual expression. And when that kind of a thing happens, the human heart is really very malnourished in what it most needs. And so things start to go downhill. And so they're going downhill. And all kinds of things. It really is like dominoes falling one after another. And this whole tragedy down at the border of the United States now, with these children coming across the border in droves, is kind of the result of a societal decline that's very, very far-reaching. And the only thing that's important becomes material well-being. For material well-being, you sacrifice family, you sacrifice everything, you risk getting killed and coming across the border for some kind of a material well-being. And it's not the kids' fault, certainly, but it is the fault of parents and governments and cultures that create an atmosphere where the only thing that matters is the satisfaction of instinct of one sort or another.
My sense is that, one of the things that the church has offered to our society, which now seems to be challenged, is that the church has always acted as a conscience for the society. And now when we pay little or no attention to conscience, when conscience means little or nothing, then the church itself means little or nothing to the rest of the society.
Right.
And so when you start talking about, that basically that destruction of the of a relationship based upon understanding the impact of love, it's detrimental to all of us. And as you talk in terms of being on a spiral, we're more and more becoming isolated from each other, from our society, and nothing's going to pull us out except a commitment to basically what we know, to faith, to religion, to basically to Jesus.
Amen.
Amen. So tell me, what are your hopes for the Diocese of Madison, Bishop Morlino? What and as we all know, in the time that we have as bishops, as leadership, what do you want history to say about your impact on the Diocese of Madison?
That's a tough one. I would suppose that the words of Pope Francis immediately come to mind. I hope they'll say I did my best. But no, I hope that we've focused, we've begun to focus more on God, more on Christ, especially in the liturgy, especially in Eucharistic devotion, and especially in the formation of our younger people, so that we're really passing through a time of tribulation at the moment. But I'm hoping that there will be a better day for the church, for our young people, where we're free really to look into the face of Christ and receive the joy that only He can give.
Thank you so much, Bishop Morlino, for joining us and sharing with all of us your story and your perspectives. It's been a real honor to have you as a guest this morning.
It's been my joy, Jeff. Thank you very much.
Archbishop, will you, as always, close with a prayer?
Sure. We ask the Lord's blessings upon the Diocese of Madison, on its leader, Bishop Morlino, on the faithful, the priests, the deacons, the religious who make up that wonderful diocese, that they may continue to be firm in the faith, strong in their witness, and a loving presence of Christ to all who come in contact with them. And may God's blessings be upon us all, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Bishop Morlino and Archbishop Listecki. The Archbishop and I will be back in a couple of weeks with another edition of Living Our Faith. Hope you will join us then. In the meantime, I'm Jeff Jackson, wishing you a happy weekend. See you at Mass.